Welcome today to Guidance for Better Life. I'm excited to share the story I have today because God shares His love with us every single day. The problem is sometimes His love is shared in such a subtle way, almost imperceptible without really paying attention, that it goes unrecognized. And I find that very sad that God sends love to us each individually every day, and we miss so much of that. And I hope today's show gives you an example. It may not be like my guest's example, but maybe it'll give you some ideas to look a little closer at things that seem subtle that are really quite profound. So thank you for watching today. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Del.
This is an author and a friend of mine, Rebecca Vitero, and you wrote a very short story, but really profound. In this book, Testimonies of God's Love, Book 3. And thank you for coming and sharing. The books are beautiful, but there's something about the audience hearing your story kind of face to face a little bit, from your own self, not have to read. We can entertain them, and they don't even have to read a book. This is a touching story for you, and I hope I keep it together also. You lost your dad. How long ago was that when he passed?
Approximately 5 years now.
Okay, 5 years ago, and for whatever reason, your mom decided what?
To not announce his death in any papers.
No papers, no announcement.
No funeral services, nothing. Any of our friends, we had to personally call them on the phone and let them know that my father had passed.
Now, we're not here to judge your mom. We're not walking in her shoes.
Correct.
But it seems there was something missing. There wasn't that closure where you have a service and you get to share your grief with family and friends and joy for a relationship.
There was nothing.
There was I think there was a void there. It didn't finish. There was no period.
Correct, yeah.
And you don't say that in your story, but as I reviewed it for our interview, I started contemplating on that. I said, wow, that makes the story, and what we're going to hear, there's more to the story, I think even more interesting how much God loves you and His time in it all. So you had this void, and then it was, how much later till you had this experience we're going to share?
It was approximately 2 to 3 months later.
All right, 2 to 3 months later without having a service or anything.
Yeah, here one day and then just gone.
Yeah,
Nothing.
You said one day he's in the hospital and he's just gone.
Gone.
No closure, no nothing. Just
no goodbye, no.
That's got to be tough. I mean, losing your father was difficult, I'm sure. I know you, and I know you loved your father, but just kind of nothing.
Yes.
So you were down here at my house where we do spiritual retreats.
Yes, I was attending a weekend retreat.
And this one was different because in the winter we have retreats down at our school. We have a lot of people coming, lots of stuff going on. We facilitate the spiritual retreats. You've been coming for years. But in the winter, up here in the mountains of Virginia, between the wind and the rain and snow and ice, it's usually not prudent to open up the school like we normally do.
Correct.
But we still live in our house. So we open up to 13 or 14 students, handpicked, and come up on the weekends and stay in our house and, eat here and all that.
Yes.
And Lynn takes good care of us.
Does she ever?
Yes, does she ever. And we continue our spiritual studies and trying to grow closer to God and learn His ways. And one of His ways is how He blesses us. It's almost like its own language, His language of the divine. And sometimes it's very subtle. So you had a retreat in the home.
Yes.
And what happened?
We were taking a break, and I went upstairs.
We do take breaks, that's right. Not very often, but I guess once in a while we have to.
Every now and then.
Yeah.
But I went upstairs to use the bathroom. And whenever I walked in, there was a vase of beautiful pink carnations.
No big deal, just pink carnations.
They were my father's favorite flower. And whenever I saw that vase full of beautiful pink carnations, I just began to cry. Because to me, that was God's way of giving my heart some relief.
Yeah.
Because I missed him so much, and it was a way for God to let me know, my dad's okay.
Yeah.
He's fine. Everything's good. And I felt so much joy and happiness from seeing that vase of flowers.
In your story, you elaborated a little bit more. I think you said you had felt peace after you knew he was okay. Peace. Yes. I think joy, comfort.
Yes.
It really touched you deeply.
Oh,
it still does.
5 years later, and I'll still cry because God knew how my heart was hurting.
Yes.
And I never said anything to anybody.
But somehow, Lynn, who shopped for the flowers, God must have guided her that one day. I don't remember seeing pink carnations very often around here. I suspect maybe God gave her a nudge. Get the pink carnations. Instead of putting them in some of the other facilities, she happened to put them upstairs.
Yes.
And all these things lined up. And if the viewer out there thinks it's a coincidence, I understand that. And that's what's so sad is things like this that seem like coincidences are overlooked when you knew in your heart it was a gift of God's love.
Yes.
And that's why we're sharing this. So I'm not debating. I know that may look like it. And those of you that can relate to this story, you get it. You just get it. You probably had similar things happen, maybe not as dramatic. I'm wondering, at funeral services, and I just got this just now. I hadn't thought about that before the interview. What's one of the things that there's an abundance of at a funeral service? Flowers.
Flowers.
I just felt that now. Was that your service? I wonder if that was God providing you with a service.
It was. Thank you.
Wow. Isn't that beautiful?
It's amazing.
Yeah. And a lot of the relief and comfort you have at a regular service. Are you okay?
And again, it's God's communication. Here in this interview today, healing the heart again.
Yes, because I was just given that. It never occurred to me. And all of a sudden I'm sitting here and I think flowers, services where a funeral service sometimes provides comfort, relief, and kind of, okay, that's it, everything's okay. And you didn't have that.
Yes.
And God knew that you missed it. And he picked, somehow, coincidentally, I don't think it was a coincidence, but whatever.
No.
And how do you know something's not a coincidence? You can say, well, that was a coincidence. But look at Rebecca, if the camera's still rolling. I don't know if we've shut down. If you have an experience that seems simple and everybody thinks it's nothing, and you feel that much as Rebecca's feeling, you have such a relief. By definition, it is something. And what we're suggesting to consider, it's a gift of love from God through His Holy Spirit. That's what we're suggesting, something you can consider. But when, by definition, it was special, because it touched you, and it's still touching you.
It is. God's love is so amazing.
You had your service.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. He just did it again. I promise you, it just had that thought. Now, since that time, has some of the comfort and knowing your dad was okay, since your personal service, just you and the divine, have you kept some of that peace and comfort, or is it diminished?
No, because any time I reread that story, it shows me how much God truly knows me and truly cares and loves me. And he knew my heart was hurting. And he provided just that little bit of comfort from something so seemingly insignificant.
So seemingly insignificant, so subtle. But for you, you got it.
It was huge.
I wonder about the other 15 or so people in the class, 13 or 14 people, I don't recall, it's been a while. Might have walked in, a pretty flower, smelled good, and walked out. It was for you only.
Yes.
There were just flowers to everybody else, just decor. But it was a funeral service for your dad where you had that peace, comfort, some closure, never complete closure with a lost loved one. And you saw it, you felt it. So it was very subtle. It was non-existent for most people that went up there. They were just pretty flowers. There was so much more for you.
They were such a gift from God.
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Well, you're a gift from God also. And thank you for sharing your story today.
You're welcome.
And if you want more of that story, it's a short story, but there's a little bit more. Again, in Testimonies of God's Love, Book 3. This is a series of about 5 books now of so many stories of God's love. And what the series is about, I haven't pushed books so far at all on this show. But I feel like today to share a little bit. They're stories of God's love, as we just heard. There's so many ways God tries to give his love to us, share his love with us, and sometimes we recognize it, but sometimes his language, the language of the divine, is not understood. And these books, like Rebecca's, tries to show you so many different ways that God expresses his love. And our purpose is you'll recognize some going, wow, I had an experience similar. I didn't know that was God's love. And once you recognize it's a gift of God's love, then you can receive it. If you don't recognize it, it's very difficult to receive. And you received God's love in simple pink carnations. I think that's the title of your story, Pink Carnations. Wow. Don't figure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching. I hope this gives you some thoughts or insights, or maybe you go back to a former experience that touched you, but you didn't realize who was touching you. Maybe it was the divine hand. And thank you so much for watching, and I truly hope this show blessed you. Thank you.